All right, we're at the top of the hour, and I'm going to get started. I'm Lisa Schwartz with Berkeley Lab, and with me here today is Pete Cappers, and we're going to talk about the resources and assistance that state energy offices and public utility commissions can get from Berkeley Lab and other labs free of charge. Next slide. I'm also going to talk about upcoming webinars for fellows and talk about the team behind the technical assistance, and then Pete will get into the details. And then we can do Q&A as we go along. Feel free to enter a question in the chat box or raise your hand and be happy to take yourself off mute and ask the question. Next slide. So we have a lot of webinars coming up, and I hope many of you can make them. After this, next week, we have one on distributed energy resources interconnection. We have one on May 12th. On May 20th, we're going to focus on stakeholder engagement and also, if confirmed, the Energy Innovator Fellows Summit. We'll let you know about that. And then on June 5th, we're going to focus on data visualization. This is going to be really fun. This is Ben Paulos with Berkeley Lab, who does a lot of our data visualizations. And he's going to talk about some of his design principles. How do you effectively communicate data to different audiences, both internally within your organization as well as externally with your stakeholders, and give you some tips and tricks and have some interactive exercises with you. So that'll be a good one. On June 17th, JP Carvalho is going to talk about electric system reliability, both on the bulk power system and the distribution system, with a whole new presentation. That'll be great. And then on July 24th, we'll talk about program planning and evaluation, things like demand response programs or electric vehicle programs, just as examples. But how do you set up, design a program, and then how do you evaluate it to see if it met your objectives? And that will include Steve Schiller and Miles Collins with Berkeley Lab. And then we're also working to schedule a webinar on data centers that might focus on forecasting as well as potentially tariff issues. So all our webinars start at 2 p.m. You've gotten some information about how to register, and feel free to reach out with any questions. Next slide. So Pete Cappers, who will be talking today, leads up our state technical assistance program. It's helped by Jason Ball, but behind him are 3 other labs and many other folks. I've listed some staff support. For example, topic areas includes myself for several areas and other members of my team. And the folks at DOE just wanted you to be familiar with whom you can reach out to individually. But Pete also is a great one-stop shop for your questions about how to access technical assistance on a variety of topics. I've also included at the bottom of the slides links to where you can learn more about our staff and where you can find more publications, tools, webinars, and projects by topic. I'm going to post next a link in the chat box that will provide you the slides that we're showing today, so you can get all these links. All right, Pete, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you all coming to join today. So yeah, for the next, probably, this will not be a very long presentation. I'm probably going to talk for about 15 or 20 minutes about this program called the Resources and Assistance for State Energy Offices and Regulators program. It was originally called RAISER, and then it was determined by the powers that be that was not an adequate name, and so we just like to call it at this point the State TA program to make it as generic as possible. But it is a TA program that's available to anybody from a state public utility commission or a state energy office in the US or its territories, with the opportunity, and it gives the opportunity for you all to gain access to high impact technical assistance. Now, the program is designed to match the timing and depth of your need with, as Lisa sort of listed above, a bunch of internationally recognized experts from the Department of Energy's National Lab Complex. And the idea here is we're looking to address issues associated with your rapidly changing regulatory and policy landscape. Now, this program is open to, like I said, anyone working at an SEO or a PUC. That includes both staff and leadership at any level of the organization. Anyone who needs support with or have questions regarding any electricity related issues. Now, there are no limits to the number of individual requests someone from an SEO or a PUC can make through this program. I actually have one person from the Oregon PUC, I believe, who has submitted like 7 or 8 of these over the last year or so. She has maybe 2 or 3 outstanding right now. So it's definitely something that we hope people just come back to and use again and again. So let me give you a little more insight in sort of what we offer. And there are three specific types of technical assistance that this program provides. So first and foremost is our help desk. This provides up to 4 hours of technical assistance with probably a single national lab subject matter expert, with the goal of addressing inquiries that are pretty straightforward and narrowly focused. The requests could address or could include discussing the state of the art and most recent research on a particular electricity related topic, delivering some sort of short presentation at, let's say, a virtual workshop, or even performing very limited quantitative or qualitative research. Now, this type of TA is available right now via a very simple intake form that's accessible on our website, statetaprogram.lbl.gov. Don't worry if you don't have a chance to write that down. There'll be a later slide that'll have all this information. Now, let me give you a few very specific examples of the types of help desk requests that we've serviced in the past. So in this first example, a PUC is planning to open a proceeding in response to FERC Order 2222. And that's going to require them to allow aggregators to operate in the state's retail electricity market in order to participate in wholesale market opportunities. Now, the lead commissioner, she wants to vet the list of issues they have already developed and leverage the experiences of other states to see if they've missed anything, and ultimately to prioritize which issues to tackle first. Now, after submitting the request and getting it approved, a researcher who recently completed a similar technical assistance request connects with the commissioner who requested this to clarify what's needed. About a week later, the SME sends over a list of states with recent regulatory proceedings on the issue and schedules a call to discuss the experiences from these other states and how that might actually help this PUC prioritize what to pursue and when. In this second example, a staffer from a state energy office is part of a team tasked with developing a community education program on renewable energy development. Now, she's aware that one of the main concerns raised by many communities has to do with the adverse impacts on property values. So she submits a TA request to better understand what the most recent and relevant research is on this issue. About a week later, a leading researcher on property value impacts emails her to clarify the request and then to schedule a meeting to present his latest research findings. The SEO staffer coordinates the timing of that virtual meeting so her manager and several colleagues can actually attend with her. And then they collectively discuss the implications of the research that was presented on their plans for developing a community program. Now, in this last example, a manager of the PUC is working with a counterpart at the state energy office to pull together a virtual workshop on transportation electrification. One of the panels will be focused on electric vehicle rate design, and they'd like someone from the labs to participate. About a week and a half after submitting their request, a leading researcher on EV rate design emails them to learn more about the panel, but also to understand what kind of presentation would be needed for it and what kinds of questions would be posed to panelists to collectively discuss. When the workshop is held about 8 weeks later, the SME delivers a short virtual presentation and then engages with the other panelists for the remaining 45 minutes of the session in a lively bout of Q&A. So the second type of technical assistance, called Expert Match, provides requesting state energy offices and PUCs with about 100 hours, up to 100 hours of support from a national lab staffer. Now, these requests are going to address deeper inquiries that require additional time and effort than those help desk ones I just talked about, but this is also available via our website. Now, let me walk you through, again, 3 different examples of requests that we typically or have qualified as expert match to just give you a better sense of how these might differ from those other ones I just talked about. So in our first example, A manager at a PUC has been tasked to better understand the opportunity presented by smart inverters in improving reliability via distribution system planning efforts and hosting capacity analyses. After they submit a TA request and get it ultimately approved, a nationally recognized expert in interconnection emails the PUC manager to begin a brief scoping process. They end up holding several virtual meetings over the course of the next month to really flesh out the request and identify how the information provided will be subsequently used in order to determine what content and material would be most beneficial for the SME to provide. About a month later, the SME sends over a presentation outline for the manager's review and approval. And after some back and forth to finalize it, well, the SME sets off to develop that presentation based on that approved outline. 8 weeks later, the SME gets on the phone, delivers the presentation to the manager and her commissioner, after which the SME facilitates a conversation. Sorry, I don't know why this is moving ahead on me. Let's see, they basically just to talk about the results in different program evaluations. Sorry about that. So in the second example, a staff member from a state energy office is part of a team tasked with leveraging an energy affordability metrics to inform future program design efforts. They are aware that there are a number of different ways to calculate this metric, but are really unsure about the specifics. In addition, they believe that at least a few other states have already gone down this path. And so they really want to understand which approach those states took and how that approach might have affected program design, as well as any resulting evaluations of program success. So they submit a TA request. Within about a week, a leading national researcher on the topic emails them to schedule a meeting, again, to clarify the request and better understand what the staffers' end goals are with this information in hand. About a month or so after that meeting, the SME files a memo with the staffer that summarizes her research on the topic. The two virtually meet to discuss the SME's findings, and then they schedule a series of conversations with a broad array of program managers at the state energy office to discuss how the choice of energy affordability metrics might alter program design decisions and subsequently get them to the finish line. And in this last example, a manager at the PUC is working with a counterpart at the state energy office to develop a policy on who can own and operate EV charging stations. Now, he understands that this is a really complex issue with both short-term and long-term implications for competition, price, and service, but doesn't really have the background to fully assess what those issues are and trade-offs are. So he submits a TA request to leverage an expert who will help him better understand the options and trade-offs associated with these different approaches. About a week after submitting his request, a leading researcher on EV business models and utility regulation emails the manager to really better understand, the policy that's under development in order to determine how she can best support the joint PUC and state energy office activities. About 6 weeks later, the SME delivers a memo highlighting the opportunities and challenges associated with allowing investor-owned utilities in the state to own and operate charging stations. And the group then invites a number of commissioners from the PUC and high-level leaders from the state energy office to discuss the contents of the memo on what it might mean for this state's policies. So this last type of technical assistance offered by the state TA program is called deep dive. Now, this type seeks to address complex inquiries which require considerable time and effort of multiple person months by a team of national lab experts. Requests that would typically fit into this category would require really in-depth and detailed technical analysis or substantial qualitative research in order to support lengthy proceedings, fact-finding missions, or strategic planning efforts, to name just a few. Now, although applications are not currently being accepted, we do hope that in late summer or early fall, that'll change, but that's very dependent on federal budgets. Nonetheless, to help you understand what types of TA requests could be serviced when we do open the window for to accept new applications, let me provide you with a few deep dive examples. So in this first example, a manager at a PUC has been tasked by one of her commissioners to better understand how the impacts from electric vehicles could be considered in distribution system planning, and including how vehicle-to-grid opportunities could act as a non-wires alternative. Now, given the limited amount of time she can commit to researching this issue, she submits an application for deep dive technical assistance. Now, about a month and a half, 2 months later, she's notified that her request has been granted and is connected with a team of national lab subject matter experts to develop a statement of work that will provide her with the content she needs to meet her commission's request. Ultimately, the lab team and the state TA team, they collectively agree that the lab team will first prepare a detailed report on the potential effects of different EV adoption rates and charging patterns on distribution system planning outcomes. The team will next develop and deliver 2 training sessions to commissioners and staff regarding how to value electric vehicle to grid opportunities as non-wires alternatives in distribution system planning, highlighting any relevant experiences from states who are already doing or at least considering this. And then last but not least, the lab team will support the PUC through a series of facilitated discussions based on a review of a utilities filing of their distribution system plan, which is the first in the state to explicitly include the effects of EV adoption in the analysis. Now, in this second example, a division director from a state energy office has been tasked with implementing the state's energy strategy. It's a 10-year initiative with a broad goal of establishing the state as a regional baseload power provider, ensuring reliable service for its residents, but while also contributing to broader grid stability across the Western interconnection. The division director applies for TA to evaluate future generation and transmission system needs in support of the state's energy goals. She also requests support in assessing the impacts of high electricity demand from data centers and other major sources of load growth on those goals. Late in the summer, she's notified of her selection and begins developing a statement of work with the team of lab SMEs dedicated to the TA project. They collectively agree that a customized version of an open source lab developed production cost model is going to fit the bill. With that model in hand, the state and lab team will identify a number of key planning scenarios to be analyzed, which will ultimately result in 2 case studies being developed. Finally, the lab team agrees to develop and deliver a series of customized training materials that will enable and empower staff from the State Energy Office to run the model on their own after the lab SME team has completed their work. Now, in this last example, several managers at the State Utility Commission and Energy Office are jointly interested in building the capacity of their staff in relation to forecasting in the electricity sector. They submit a request for lab staff to develop a series of in-person workshops on the topic. Now, upon learning that they're going to receive this support, a team of SMEs from the labs connects with the state PUC and energy office team in order to discuss the intended goals of the training and who the ultimate target audience is for that training. The outcome is an agreement that the workshop should focus on the forecasting of load, electric vehicles, and building electrification, 3 core areas of interest for both the commission and the energy office. They collectively determined that the first in the series of the workshops will provide a broad overview of the purpose and common methods used in forecasting, along with best practices specific to these 3 areas of interest. And following that, 3 workshops will be held that each dive deeper into a specific area, focusing on benchmarking, risk, and uncertainty in forecasts. Approximately 5 months later, the labs deliver the first of these 4 workshops, each scheduled roughly 6 weeks apart. Now, hopefully by now, you can see that this TA program can support a wide array of requests. Although the Department of Energy has identified a handful of high priority topics listed here, the program will consider requests on any topic, which are in line with federal policy. So please don't let this list limit your interest in seeking support from this program. Now, as Lisa mentioned before, there are 4 labs that are participating in this Technical Assistance Program. They include experts and researchers from Berkeley Lab, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and Argonne National Laboratory. And so now that you've seen at a high level what this TA program has to offer, I really do urge you to open up an internet browser and type in the URL statetaprogram.lbl.gov. This will give you access to more information about the program's various offerings and provide you with an opportunity to submit a TA request, which, like I said, will be serviced by leading experts from one or more of the 4 different national labs that are participating in the program. Last but not least, as Lisa mentioned, feel free to directly reach out to any of the staff leads at each lab associated with this program. My contact information and Jason's contact information are listed there from Berkeley Lab, but you can also see the lab leads from NREL, PNNL, and Argonne as well. Any of us would be more than happy to talk to you about whatever issue, challenge you're facing, and ways in which our TA program could potentially help. So with that, Lisa, let's sort of open it up for Q&A if it works for you.